Shock horror, Jose Mourinho's been sacked as Manchester United manager. Big breaking news this morning, and it's a very special OTB AM coming your way for the next hour or so. We're going to be getting analysis and reaction to the big breaking news from Old Trafford. 2.5 years after being appointed Manchester United manager, the Jose era is finally done. Funnily enough, yesterday was just the 3-year anniversary of him getting sacked by Chelsea. December is not a happy month for Jose. Ger and Phil are here. How are things, lads?
Yeah,
surprised?
Just on Paul Pogba's Instagram, he hasn't updated it from his post yesterday when he was launching some new Adidas football boots. So yesterday he was busy.
But that, of course, is the reason why Jose Mourinho sacked. It's because of sporting endorsements of his players.
Exactly.
Poor Paul Pogba, poor Jesse Lingard, losing their messiah.
Well, Pogba in the dressing room doing stuff, but not on the pitch.
This is for Jesse Lingard's birthday.
Like
it worked. Jesse scored at Anfield on Sunday.
It's true. It's true. It was an absolute masterstroke. This isn't surprising news.
It is a little bit because they don't have a replacement. They're giving, so the latest news is that Michael Carrick is going to have it for a week, and then they're going to try and get an interim manager to the end of the season, and at that point they'll appoint a new manager in the summer. It is surprising because they're going to have to pay him for a start.
They've got lots of money.
They do have lots of money, but at the same time they didn't get rich giving it away, and they don't have a plan. So
how do you know that?
It's knee-jerky. Well, because they haven't announced it.
How do you know that part of the point wasn't to actually sack him right now, get an interim manager into a situation where he can take over for a couple of months, and the plan is basically to take this piece of lead that is sinking this ship and just cutting it off right now, and then whoever it is, it's better than Jose Mourinho. That is the plan, and then at the end of the season, the plan will take its next step, which is appointing a permanent manager. I can see the logic, but I think it's a better plan than proceeding with Jose Mourinho.
I actually, my feeling on it was that they'd be better with no manager than Jose. Just instantly, the players go into training today and they think, thank God he's gone. Like, the cloud over Old Trafford is lifted now. And
fair enough, right? Except when Ryan Giggs came in and after David Moyes, the performances were shite.
Yeah.
Absolute muck at that point. And so, I don't know if automatically the next manager comes in. Now, it's a better squad, I think, right now than when Moyes left and Giggs. I don't know, is it a better squad? It probably is.
I think it is,
a better squad. There's definitely players there who, with Michael Carrick coming in and going, this is our identity, this is the football that we're going to try and play. You are going to be a central midfielder, you're going to play like a central midfielder, the way I would have played, for example. Maybe that transforms everybody's fortunes. Maybe that makes the team more fluid and better to watch. Certainly the reaction of the crowd is going to be amazing. Like, they're going to be fully behind this.
Yeah, that's all positive things. Yeah. And also the damage limitation in terms of assets. Like, there was an asset sitting on the bench at the weekend in Paul Pogba that was slowly going to decrease in value as the months went by through a transfer window.
He's not decreasing in value. He is not decreasing.
Of course he is. By sitting on the bench week in, week out under Jose Mourinho, he would have decreased in value the longer Jose Mourinho stayed as Manchester United manager. There's no question about it. He's not playing. We've got short memories.
Absolutely not. The value of Paul Pogba comes down to the commercial deals, the fact that him and Dybala are launching that Adidas thing.
That being on the pitch helps your commercial value.
Well,
140 million was the price quoted on the back of one of the papers today. Juventus are willing to splash. Like, that's profit. That would be an unbelievable deal if United were able to ship Pogba off for 140 million.
Absolutely, I'm more than happy to restore him to that team and for him and Ronaldo. I don't think the other thing is that he couldn't get injured sitting on the bench, whereas he could actually, if the hierarchy's plan is to sell him at Christmas. You manage these last few weeks and you go, thanks very much. You've got a calf strain, do you? Great.
Okay, put it to you this way. What did keeping Jose Mourinho do for the value of Paul Pogba? Nothing. It definitely didn't increase his value. I think we can disagree on this one. I think it actually was destroying the brand of Paul Pogba. It was this poisonous side story to Paul Pogba. Now, granted, a lot of people don't care about
30 million followers on Instagram. Absolutely irrelevant. Paul Pogba's brand is completely separate and divorced from the minute that he plays football. I think
that's not true.
For right now, it is. For the next 3 or 4 weeks, it's absolutely irrelevant.
It's not part of your footballing ability and the minutes that you're spending on the pitch has to be connected to the brand. It just has to be.
Cristiano Ronaldo just got transferred for more money than he was ever transferred in the past, and he is nowhere near the quality footballer. That was purely a decision made on being able to recoup the money that you've spent and to boost your marketing globally. That was what that decision was made. And Pogba, until he actually starts playing like he did for France over a sustained period of time, the football is almost largely irrelevant. And I think this is actually an irrelevancy. I think the fact is that Mourinho is gone, Manchester United now have to somehow break the pattern of every single decision that they've made since Ferguson left and do the right thing. And you're given the ownership and the Glazers and Ed Woodward credit for sacking Mourinho.
I'm not giving them credit. I'm not giving them credit.
You said that it's better.
I'm giving them more credit than you're giving them. I'm not saying this is a fantastic decision. I'm saying that they were in a very, very bad situation here and they had to make this move. I'm not saying that the board is completely should be absolved of blame like whatsoever.
Who's coming in? I think, how are they improving the situation?
Well, you're saying before we came on air that Eddie Howe should be the next Manchester United manager.
I mean, before we came on air, lots of stuff gets said.
Yeah, but like...
I'm not saying Eddie Howe should be the manager.
Who should be the next Manchester United manager then?
I don't know, but I'm sure as hell Ed Woodward does not have a clue either.
No, he doesn't.
I would say that they are checking Alex Ferguson right now going, what do you think? Could you know, if we were to put loads of supports in, you wouldn't have to come in at 6 a.m, you wouldn't have to stay until late at night the way you did in the past. Could you just be around the place? I would say that's the best plan they have at the moment. They're sitting there looking at the Wikipedia page of Zidane going, oh Jesus, look at what he did. And they have not got a clue.
Not having Jose Mourinho as part of your football club is a pretty good plan to me, because he has been that poison.
He's toxic.
He really is. Thank you.
No, I can see both sides of the argument that, okay, the ownership, they don't have a clue what they're doing. But there was no point persisting with Jose Mourinho. It had gone stale. Like his first season, he won a couple of trophies, 3 by his admission, but we're not counting the Community Shield. They somehow managed to finish second last season, but this season it's their worst start since 1990. It's going to keep getting worse. Like, you only have to watch the performance on Sunday to know that they're playing Liverpool. And Roy Keane was in Sky Studio, he said, I think the players are trying. I don't think they were trying. They were trying to a certain extent, but guarantee in the next few games, you look at the stats for United's running and they'll go up, because they've always been down at the lower end under Mourinho, but they have to play with more pace and vibrancy now. And with Mourinho gone, look, they're not going to finish in the top 4 regardless of who comes in. Season is a write-off.
There's a tiny chance that sacking him before Christmas helps you salvage that 4th place, just given the next couple of fixtures. And I know you wanted to go through these, Phil.
There's always, when a manager is appointed or sacked, I always look at the fixtures, because there's a reason they've sacked them today.
Well, it's Cardiff, Huddersfield, Bournemouth, Newcastle, their next Premier League fixtures.
Yeah,
it's a pretty good time to sack a manager.
Absolutely. New manager comes in and there you go. It's a bit of a gimme. Now, those games, with Mourinho in charge, you wouldn't back United to win any of those games. Remember, they beat Fulham 4-1 a few weeks ago. They were 3-0 up at half time. We didn't know what we were like, geez, United are winning 3-0 at half time. When has this happened in the last few months? When have we watched Match of the Day where United were so high up on the running order? Usually they're that bit where you're struggling to stay awake on Saturday, like, oh, United are on. That 1-0 win. That's how bad it's got.
Yeah. I should say a couple of guests that we've got coming up. We've got Dave McIntyre coming your way very shortly. Daniel Harris will join us. Nathan's going to join us. And Graham Hunter's going to join us as well before we wrap up in about half an hour's time. You can tweet us at Off The Ball. You can comment on the stream if you happen to be watching on Facebook or on YouTube. We'd love to know who you think the next Manchester United manager should be. So you don't think it's going to be Eddie Howe? You think it should be...
Okay, so it should be Pochettino if you're Manchester United, or it should be somebody who has proven themselves to be capable of building a team and an identity. And I don't know, would we automatically have assumed that Sarri was going to get his team playing the way they are, that Unai Emery, maybe Unai Emery was a bit of a home run, maybe that was obvious.
Unai Emery's not a plaster. That's what United need at the moment until the end of the season.
No. Are we talking about
until the
end of the season? Like, if they gave it to Carrick, they're not going to. But it doesn't matter. It's all about who they appoint in the summer.
And that appointment has to be made with an overarching plan and a philosophy in the players that we're buying, and we're not buying them for commercial reasons. We're buying them to create a football team that wins, as opposed to we're trying to increase our marketing. But that's how the club is run. Yeah. The club is a money-making business. It's a machine for making money. It is not a machine for winning football matches.
Yeah, but I do think that what they were doing over the past couple of weeks was completely decreasing them as a money-making machine, particularly, as you say, you think the Champions League race is over. We want to bring Dave McIntyre in. Dave, good morning to you.
Hi lads, how are we doing?
Good. Are you surprised by this? What's your whole take on this? I presume you saw this coming a long way out.
I saw it coming in that felt it was probably going to happen around March. I was 100% sure that he was not be the manager heading into next season. I didn't see it happening today. But when you look at the last month in particular, against Valencia and the one against, not a surprise.
Sorry, we just lost Dave there. We're going to get him back in just a moment. As I say, we are going to be chatting to Daniel Harris, Nathan Murphy and Graham Hunter as well a little bit later on. So the point you're making is that this is all about the commercial value. So you accept the point that Jose Mourinho was decreasing Manchester United as a commercial product?
Mourinho was toxic and was a rubbish manager. Yes. Absolutely. But what's the plan? Who are the people who are making the decisions? They're going to screw this decision up like they've screwed up the post-Ferguson decision, the post-Moyes decision, and now the post-Van Gaal decision. They are going to screw it up because they're the same people making the decisions for the same reasons. Where's the Johan Cruyff in this story the way there is in the Barcelona story?
Unless there is truth in the Saudi Arabia story, that the Glazers really see football as an economy, as a bubble. And they see that there's a possibility that this thing may burst or may just decrease in the pace it's increasing at in the next couple of years. And their plan was basically to make it to the Champions League next season or maybe the year after, maybe get one more Premier League title if they can, and then get rid of it to the Saudi investors.
If they sell the club to Saudi investors, that is not going to go down well, by the way.
One man who's been chatting to us a lot about the Manchester United hierarchy over the past couple of weeks and months is Daniel Harris, who joins us. Good morning, Daniel. How are things?
Good, thanks. How are you?
You must be delighted.
Yeah, I guess I probably am. You always kind of feel slightly awkward about celebrating someone losing their job, but at the same time, yeah, Jose Mourinho is handsomely rewarded for what he's doing, and I wasn't particularly looking forward to watching 5 months of terrible football for no reason. So, yeah, I mean, I'm kind of surprised that United have done this because of the money that they would have had to have paid. I guess the way that they would have looked at it would be that, number one, £6 million of money that they could possibly claw back by doing something in the Champions League or by getting to the top four, both of which are unlikely but not impossible, but under Mourinho, absolutely impossible. And they don't want players that they want to keep mentally checking out and sorting themselves out for next season, and so that the new guy would actually have a fight to keep them. So I guess that's why they've done it. But it probably got to the point where something had to be done because of the way United were playing, and my guess is that the players also had absolutely no interest in playing for him. And when that happens, you've got a big problem.
For sure. That whole idea of them saving themselves money by sacking him, perhaps at the other side of the PSG game, that money just doesn't really matter to Manchester United in the grand scheme of things, does it? Because there is the whole view of how big an impact this was having on them as a commercial product, because they were dour to watch. You don't know when people might have started voting with their feet. Granted, the rebellion from the Manchester United fans was a lot quieter than I expected it to be over the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think because the problem with the way the United fans are is that they know that the biggest problem with the club is not Jose Mourinho. And a lot of people, and if you go to the games, there's sort of a tacit acceptance that the biggest problem with the club is the board. You know that the only thing you can do to get rid of the board is to stop going, and people don't want to do that. And it's very understandable why people don't want to do that. So getting after Mourinho, and I think what we've seen actually really with the three managers post-Fergie is that it's really been the players to the most significant extent that have got them sacked, particularly Moyes and Mourinho. So when Moyes was the manager, he didn't get that much aggravation from the crowd, who were generally quite supportive and sort of trying to be supportive, trying to be seen to be supportive. And the players, I guess, are sitting there thinking, hang on a sec, I've got a deal. They've got a more pressing urge to do something about it because their careers are affected. So the players have to basically not put it in for a little while, some short-term pain, and then they get a new manager. And I think that was what we saw happen, and it was quite different. I mean, at the time, the thing that reminded me, or it didn't remind me of, was when Roy Hodgson was at Liverpool. Clearly the wrong man for the wrong job, and the fans basically got him fired by making such a fuss that his position basically became untenable. United supporters didn't do that, so the players basically did it. But even after it was clearly finished with Moyes, he got quite a lot longer than you thought he would have done, until there was a particular performance at Everton where I remember standing at Goodison Park that day thinking, quite pleased that United it was so bad, because I just felt like there is no way that they can continue after this. This is it. But under Van Gaal, there was a particularly terrible performance at Stoke over, it was maybe New Year's Day or Christmas. It was around Christmas, and you thought, this has just got to be it. This is so bad that there's no possible coming back from that. But he managed to carry on till the end of the season, which is why I thought that Mourinho would probably get to the end of the season. But I imagine that things behind the scenes were intense, in that perhaps the animosity to Van Gaal was football related, the animosity towards Mourinho was more personal, that makes the whole thing more poisonous. And him being there wasn't doing anything good for what I suppose we have to call the business and the brand. So that was why they decided to act. And I guess I think it's a good thing for United that they have acted, because what you need some good feeling around the club. Even if United end up staying in sixth, end up getting beat by Paris Saint-Germain, which is a perfectly reasonable thing to think will happen, quite likely actually that will happen. If the players are happy, and then you'll see some better football, you'll see some better results, and the feeling around the club will be different when the new manager comes in the summer.
Who is that new manager going to be? Let's start with the interim for the time being, because it's something we've been talking about here. Who is
Arsene Wenger?
So it's going to be Carrick, and then who? And then who?
Arsene Wenger for the rest of the season.
I think that the rumour now is, the latest rumour from a journalist, and I can't remember who it was, so apologies for not citing my source, was that they thought it would be someone with a United connection. I think it might have been Mike Keegan from the Daily Mail saying that the interim guy might have been someone with a United connection. So I guess then you're thinking, I don't know, like someone like Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has a United connection, is a manager.
Mike Phelan.
Pardon me?
Mike Phelan.
I mean, Roy Keane. I mean, let's really get excited. Roy Keane having at that squad and having at that board would be a pleasure to behold, I guess. But I think that Solskjaer seems more likely. Except, would he really chuck in a job at Mould just to be caretaker manager, in the knowledge that nothing he could do would alter that? I don't know. If we're talking longer term, then the board have no imagination and know nothing about football. So that rules out people that aren't immediately obvious. It rules out Jardim and all the other names that you think of people that have done something good in the game. So they're not going to go to Dortmund and take Dortmund's manager. They're not.
Jardim isn't exactly this kind of mind-blowing suggestion. He's relatively famous. Non-football people should probably know who he is, no?
Does Edward would know who Jardim is?
Well, I mean, there's surely somebody in the hierarchy. Like, come on, there's surely somebody who works in the important roles at Manchester United who knows who the top managers are in Europe.
Like,
are we really saying that they don't?
I felt like when they appointed Mourinho, that was expressed as a fait accompli. This is the only guy it could be. And that to me seems slightly strange, because there were quite a lot of other guys around at the time who might have been suitable, but I understood why they went for Mourinho, because if you had a financial involvement, a financial interest, and that's the Glazers in the end, United exists to make money for the Glazers. The people that make these decisions want money, and that's their interest, and they want a successful football team only in as much as it makes them the most possible money. And so for them, they'd be looking at it thinking, well, Mourinho is probably the most likely person with the best track record who will bring in the money that they require. So I understand why they went for Mourinho, but it didn't seem like there was a very significant process of looking at candidates to work out who the best person would be.
We've got. I just want to bring in Dave here, because Dave, let's work through some of the other managers who are being linked at the moment. Antonio Conte is favourite in the betting at 11-4. Zidane also 11-4. Pochettino's 4-1, Laurent Blanc 5-1, Carrick is 6-1, and then after that you get to the Jardims at 14, Giggs, Wenger, Howe, Southgate, Ancelotti are all 20-1. What seems to make the most sense is give it to Antonio Conte now and see if he works, and then just appoint him full time in the summer. I mean, talking about the paucity of imagination, here is a manager who is
in a legal battle,
but also who
he said he doesn't want to do anything till the summer though.
He's won the league. You can buy out those legal issues.
Yeah, well, like all the odds you've just quoted are for the next permanent manager, right?
Yeah.
So I know you could make a reasonable argument for any of those guys. I think most people looking at the situation would feel that Pochettino was probably the guy they really need to be going for, not only from a footballing point of view, but as you guys have rightly been discussing, the commercial and the financial side of it, which is essentially what drives Manchester United from its very core at the moment. He would tick all those boxes. If you could convince him to leave, if you could convince him not to take the job at Real Madrid if it's been offered to him, and if he felt he was in a position where he could drive Manchester United back to the very top. But if they say in the statement as they have today that it's a manager will be appointed on a caretaker basis until the end of the season, would Conte want that job if he was being told that there wasn't really much hope? Or is there actually a real hope for the manager coming in, that if he does manage to turn things around in a big way between now and May, that there is a real possibility that he will get the job on a long-term basis. That might convince someone like Antonio Conte, but is Conte the right man for the job? Is he better than all the other candidates that you mentioned there and that you listed off there? I'm not sure he would be, given the way things ended at Chelsea, given the manner in which he fell out with a number of his players. A lot of them felt alienated under him. He was a lame duck really for the last 3 or 4 months at Stamford Bridge, which is exactly what half the squad will have felt right now under Jose Mourinho. So I think a caretaker manager with a Manchester United connection makes sense, but who could that be?
Laurent Blanc.
Is it going to be Laurent Blanc? Is his Manchester United connection to me is tenuous enough. A couple of seasons at the very end of his career, a long time ago, but he would make more sense than, say, a Keane or a Solskjaer or a Mark Hughes or a Mike Phelan or any of these guys that would be only happy to take the job for 6 months, knowing that they had absolutely no chance getting it on a long-term basis. Laurent Blanc is available. Would he come in thinking that if he showed enough success and convinced the board to a certain extent that he would get the job on long term? It's very hard to understand what's going on in the minds of the guys that are going to be making this decision. Is there any chance that the guy who comes in a week's time will get the job on a permanent basis? I'm not sure it is, and if that is the case, it rather restricts the calibre of the guy that you can bring in.
Yeah, well, like, it's two different things here. It is the idea of the long-term planning situation. Like, say we talk post-Wenger at Arsenal and we see Unai Emery's clearly been this long-term project manager. But let's face it here, these next 6 months for Manchester United are pivotal. How important is it on that caretaker manager, the post-Carrick caretaker manager, I should say, how important is it on that person to actually make sure they keep assets like Paul Pogba at the club? Or is there a situation now where it doesn't really matter? They may or may not get Champions League and Paul Pogba will be a Manchester United player next season.
Yeah, I don't think it really matters in a lot of ways. I think the 11-point gap to fourth place is pretty much insurmountable. The guy that comes in, as Daniel Riley said, it's just a case of making sure these players are actually reasonably motivated and pretty happy heading towards the final months of the season, and that someone like Paul Pogba can be convinced by the new long-term appointment to stick around at the club. The other big situation is that once you get into May, your list of options dramatically increases. Suddenly you are able in a position to maybe look at guys like Max Allegri, for example, possibly a Diego Simeone. These guys who are absolutely unavailable now. Pochettino's obviously clearly on that list as well. They're completely unavailable at this point, but maybe they might not be at the end of May when you're able to sit down at the end of the season, when they have no distractions in terms of what's going on with their current club, and you can ask them, is this something they would be interested in? Even an Ancelotti, who I know was only in his first season in Naples, but he could be potentially tempted to come back to the Premier League. So the appointment over the next few months is all about making sure, as Daniel said, there's a more of a feel-good factor around the club, because it is toxic at the moment from top to bottom. The manager doesn't get on with the players. The manager doesn't get on with the board. I'm not sure whoever comes in the next week is going to be given funds to spend in January. Why would he be? If he's definitely not the long-term manager, why would you give him any of your money to spend on players that a new manager coming in May have absolutely no truck with? So it's not going to be the status quo. I think things will definitely improve. If the Sun's headline at the weekend is to be believed in any way, that 90% of the dressing room are now against Jose Mourinho, well, things will improve, even if it's only by a small extent. But I can't see them reaching the top four. I think it's all about the next appointment. In some ways, whatever happens over the next week isn't going to have huge long-term repercussions for the club.
Daniel, we saw on Sunday, Roy Keane actually was in the Sky studio. He said, do you know what, I don't think United have the players. But what do you think of the current crop of players? Do you think new manager comes in and all of a sudden we see more from these players?
Yeah, I mean, I semi-agree with Roy Keane. Like, I've seen way better players at United, but I don't look at the Liverpool squad and the United squad and think that there's this tremendous imbalance of talent. I think that Mourinho has been getting as little as it's possible to get out of these players by winding them up, by chopping and changing the personnel all the time, chopping and changing the formation from one that doesn't suit them to another one that doesn't suit them over and over again. So I think there is quite a lot more to be got from these players. And there's a couple of them, like Marcus Rashford in particular, who in recent weeks, we've seen quite a bit from him that suggests he's actually ready to step up a level. And likewise, Anthony Martial. I think there's a lot more to come from those players, and hopefully a new manager will make that happen. And I think that when you look at the candidates who are available, and we were just talking before about Pochettino, Simeone, I think Pochettino and Simeone, either of them would be great appointments. If I was betting on who it's going to be, I'd bet on Pochettino. And I think Ancelotti is a spoofer. So I would very much hope that it isn't. He has success with other people's teams. So I would very much hope it isn't him, because this isn't a situation where he needs to come in and make everyone feel nice by smiling and raising his eyebrows in a fascinating manner. It needs someone to actually come in and build something and have a vision. And I don't think Ancelotti's that guy.
They need a great coach, Daniel.
They do need a coach, and they also need a man manager. It's rare that you see players, the managers even, that can do everything. So Fergie, for example, he wasn't a great tactician, but he was an amazing man manager with an amazing eye for a player. Mourinho was a motivator who was a motivator and a tactician, and he just sort of seemed to lose those gifts, which is why it stopped working for him. Ancelotti just seems to only have one of those things. He's a kind of a motivator in a very lovey-dovey way, whereas Simeone is someone who seems to have an eye for a player, seems to know how to organise a team, seems to know how to motivate a team. And what you get with these personalities like Simeone, and what you used to get with Mourinho, and what you're seeing with Klopp at Liverpool, is someone with a big enough personality to come and subsume an entire club in a really positive way. So, for example, I've seen people talking about Eddie Howe as well. I don't know that Eddie Howe has that strength of personality to be able to come in at a club at United and immediately make people listen to him. The players at Bournemouth are beholden to them because he's taken them up through the divisions. But if he were to get someone like that, it would be a huge gamble that I don't think the Glazers would be prepared to take. But also, he doesn't seem to have that consuming, compelling personality.
Dave, take that point on just before we let you go. That idea of the strong personality that's now needed in the Manchester United dressing room. Is a character like Eddie Howe just too meek to be a Manchester United manager?
I wouldn't insult him by calling him meek, but if you look at the managers who succeeded at United in history, Matt Busby, Tommy Docherty till he got fired, Alex Ferguson, the thing that unites them is these infectious, positive personalities that enable them to agitate all different kinds of characters to get the best out of them. And when you're dealing with a job as huge as United, where the pressure is as intense as it is, you need that ability. You need that ability to take people with you. You also need the levity to be able to understand that it is only football at the same time. And you need that ability to be able to put things away. And that requires an amazing amount of self-confidence, and it requires the ability to speak to all different kinds of people. And someone like Eddie Howe, why would players like Paul Pogba, who's won the World Cup and has a fascinatingly high opinion of himself, someone like Anthony Martial, why would he be interested in listening to Eddie Howe? And what would happen with someone like Eddie Howe is he'd have to come in and be amazing immediately, and that just seems unlikely.
Yeah, Dave, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one, because you could argue that the last two appointments have been managers that have had huge personalities, that have been able to grab a club in the past, grab a dressing room, tell players that they're maybe even better than they actually are, and bring the entire squad along with them. And that's what they wanted when the sacking of David Moyes occurred, because he was that type of Eddie Howe type manager. Maybe a bit too meek, maybe the job was a bit too big for him. So they bring in Louis van Gaal, who has managed at Ajax, he's managed at Barcelona, he's managed at Bayern Munich. They bring in Jose Mourinho. We know where he's been over his career and the success that he has brought. And yet, both managers have been sent packing with their tail between their legs, because they, as Daniel was saying, they couldn't quite bring the people along with them in a way that made everybody feel good about themselves. So now you need, I think, a cross between the two. You need someone that's somewhere between an Eddie Howe and a Jose Mourinho. And that, for me, leads us right back to either a Zidane or a Mauricio Pochettino, because Pochettino now has the credibility. He has the CV, he has the body of work behind him, unlike, say, a Moyes or an Eddie Howe at a top four club. But he also seems to be the type of guy that has a really nice way about him, that makes his players feel very good about themselves, that they really want to play for him. And he's young enough as well that it's not inconceivable that you could see him being at a club like Manchester United for 4+ years, be it 5 or 6 years, and you can really build something. Look at the academy again, get the most out of young players. Pochettino's never been afraid to bring young guys in, unlike maybe Mourinho has at times in the past, or even Van Gaal when he wasn't absolutely hamstrung by injury, as when Lingard was brought into the team, or Blackstock, or Marcus Rashford, for example. So I think the longer the conversation goes on, you end up back at the exact same place, and that's Mauricio Pochettino.
Yeah. Dave McIntyre, thanks a million.
Cheers, lads.
Let's have a look at what Paul Pogba's been tweeting. He's now deleted this, but somebody, of course, was quick enough to screenshot it. He said, caption this:
with this photo here at Man United, hashtag Man United, hashtag MUFC, hashtag, at Adidas Football, of course, hashtag Here to Create. I presume that was only put up in the last hour or so. It
was a timed one, Owen. It was one of those timed ones, maybe. Was it?
Tweet.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, does he look kind of more like, oh yeah, this is on now in terms of his own career, or that's a weird sort of moment? I presume the former. But what do you make of that, Daniel?
I think Pogba's a tit. I thought that before. I think that now. And on the one hand, we're all tits, so I don't mean that in an entirely offensive manner. But at the same time, your boss has been sacked. But your boss has been sacked partly because you haven't been pulling it out for him. And it's not that Pogba's particularly beholden to Mourinho, but he is beholden to United. He is beholden to the supporters, and he is beholden to himself, to actually people that are paying his wages, to put in a proper shift and do his best. And he hasn't done that, and he hasn't done that for quite some time. And so for him to be celebrating in that way, and I mean, obviously, that is what this is really, it doesn't make you think any more of Paul Pogba. It makes you think that the worst things that you thought about Paul Pogba seem to be the case.
Yeah, like the conversation we've been having for the last month or so is, if it comes down to a decision between Pogba and Jose Mourinho, who do the Manchester United hierarchy pick? And if we want to keep this analogy going, the Manchester United hierarchy have picked Paul Pogba. Paul Pogba has won this war. So why in your right mind would any manager who likes to have full control of a dressing room want to go into that?
I guess. I mean, and also, yeah, Matt Busby once said there should be no conceit in victory and no despair in defeat. And Pogba just hasn't earned the right to conceit in this way. And I think that a manager will be looking at the dressing room, and sportsmen and managers don't really think about things, as far as I understand it, in terms of they could go badly. They back themselves. It's like when you see a club sign a player and he plays in a position of someone who's already considered to be quite good. Generally, the player's not thinking, I'm going to go and be that understudy. They're thinking, I'm going to go and show that I should have that spot in the team. And I think that's what you get with a manager. He's going to think, well, this bloke's a bit of a dick, but at the same time, I'm good at handling dicks. And my job is basically handling dicks. I'm a manager. It's an HR job as much as it's anything else. And they think, well, I'm going to get the best out of this bloke. Like Didier Deschamps is not a great manager. As far as I could see, France won the World Cup in spite of him rather than because of him. But he managed to get Paul Pogba focused and performing. And whoever the manager is, are going to think, well, I'm going to be able to do that with Paul Pogba. And in the end, if you can't do it with Pogba, you sell him for more money than United paid for him, and you spend the money on players that you do want. But it will come back to the point that the manager will always back themselves to go in and resolve any kind of situation. And you saw it at Chelsea. Chelsea's players, Terry and Lampard and Drogba, they fired several managers, and the top-level managers kept coming, and they kept winning stuff and then getting fired again, sort of by the players almost. And because they'll always back themselves to do it, and some jobs are too good to turn down, and most managers would not turn down the opportunity to manage United.
No. Daniel Harris, appreciate your time, and congratulations again. He's gone.
No, it's not on me. Yeah, I've had worse mornings. I'll see you again.
Not entirely. We'll see you soon. Thanks a million for that, Daniel Harris there. What do you think? Do you agree with that spectrum of opinion there from Dave McIntyre to Daniel Harris?
Yeah, well, I think as well what's going to be interesting between now and the end of the season is there's a lot of these United players, they might be doing somersaults and dancing around the changing room like, ding dong, the witch is gone. But they're on trial now between now and the end of the season, because we're going to find out in the next few days who the interim manager is, but then the United players are going to be aware that there's a long-term successor coming in the summer who's obviously going to know, who's the person that's going to be getting the job in a long-term role will know that they're getting it. So they're going to have an eye on United's games. So there's players that if they don't pull the finger out, they're not going to have a future at Manchester United. There's some players that will... I wonder, will any of them go in January? Will there be players to go in January? Will there be players to come in January with a view to getting them some game time? You saw like certain players have been signed in January, you get a feel for the team, and then you're ready to hit the ground come August. So this is where United have to have a plan in place. I'm just not really convinced they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
They'll surely, like Pochettino seems like the most obvious choice. Like, you think, surely he couldn't fail at United. Look what he's done with Tottenham. He'd get more resources and he could build something even bigger.
Sounds like that time when Everton were going pretty well, when they were lingering around 4th and 5th place and they had that decent Scottish manager. If you just had a bit more resources at a bigger club.
What Pochettino has done at Spurs is better than what Moyes did at Everton.
Yeah, it's true. And he certainly showed, I guess, in terms of his style of play and all that sort of thing, that it's more.
He ticks all the boxes.
He really does. The thing is, will Manchester United actually be in a position to actually persuade Mauricio Pochettino? That's the thing I do wonder. Nathan Murphy is with us on the line. Good morning to you, Nathan.
Hi, lads.
If Manchester United want Mauricio Pochettino, is it as simple as they can go out and get him?
Probably not. Maybe something does depend on what happens for the remainder of this season. What if Spurs go and win the Champions League? What if Spurs somehow go on a late season run and put themselves together a title challenge? What if it even goes more horribly wrong for United? Maybe Pochettino does look at what's happening at Tottenham. If he can keep Harry Kane, if he can keep Dele Alli, they move to the new stadium, he feels the love and the bond. Maybe Spurs can hold on to him. But it feels as though this moment has been coming for the last 18 months, 2 years, that United would be ready to make their move. Daniel Levy has tied Pochettino down to a contract that he knows at least he'll get full value from. But this is the Glazers. This is a corporate monstrosity of Manchester United. Maybe they're looking at something else. A lot of the talk already this morning and over the last few days has been that they're looking at appointing a director of football. So what is that person's role within the club? Are they going to come in and be in charge of appointing the new manager? Is it going to be a situation like at Manchester City where Bernstein gets in and it's Guardiola lined up for a couple of years? Is there going to be that sort of plan developed? So while I think Pochettino is the clear frontrunner, and deservedly so, if this job isn't going to be appointed on a proper full-time basis till next summer, a hell of a lot can happen between now and then.
Certainly can. Like, what do you think it's not? Like, you talk about the whole idea of this being an 18-month problem. Like, we saw that this thing was going to reach its end point at some point this season, even before the season started. We knew this when everything was going on with Anthony Martial and everything Jose Mourinho was saying in pre-season. When this sort of thing happens with Jose Mourinho, it's only going to end one way. Like, people are saying they're surprised it happened now rather than at the other end of the PSG doubleheader. Are you not surprised that it didn't happen sooner?
I'm surprised it didn't happen yesterday. I thought coming away from Anfield on Sunday that this was most definitely over. United were they were a disgrace, and I thought his team selection was a disgrace as well. Going away from home, showing no ambition, showing no willingness to get on the ball. So I think there's nothing surprising about this. He had to go. It's the worst ever start of a Premier League season. Yeah, you can look back at the summer and say maybe that was the chance. We all know third season it goes horribly wrong for Jose. But again, they have to look at themselves, the board, as to did he get the players he wanted? Did he get the investment that he wanted? You can say that they spent 70 million quid on Fred, but everybody's spending 70 million quid on players these days. They probably needed to spend another 300 million, which is probably what will happen next summer. So it's easy to say they should have got rid of him during the summer. The only time it felt for me, in fact, over the entire reign really was at the very start of last season, when they went on a brilliant run. They were beating teams quite convincingly. Lukaku started very well, and you felt actually maybe this is going to come together. Maybe this is Mourinho's second season at work. But once, I think it was Manchester City they were beaten by last season, once they were beaten by them, it all just unravelled very, very quickly. And I don't think anyone is surprised that it's come to an end.
Yeah, I suppose the problem, Nathan, as well is because Manchester City and Liverpool are doing so well, and United, we know the stature of the club, the pressure on the next manager. United fans think this is the best Christmas present ever because Jose is gone. But appointing a new manager won't necessarily change things for the better. Okay, it can't get much worse than it is at the moment, but what's to say that a new manager is going to get them challenging for a title? I just wonder, has there been so much damage done over the last few years that it's going to take something special to even get them back into the conversation for a title?
It is, and that's what we're just saying, that 6 months is a long time in football. There's no guarantees at all that United are going to bounce back. The expectation when Moyes came in was that the success would continue. When Van Gaal came in, that his experience would bring them back into contenders. And then Mourinho was a nailed-on certainty to have an instant impact and make them the club that they think they are. I do think when you're looking at potential appointments that football, it feels as though it's changed dramatically over the last couple of years in England with Klopp and with Guardiola. Football supporters now are seen as consumers. They're seen as people who come in and get as much money out of them as possible. But in return, what they want is to be entertained. It's drudgery through life, and they want to go and they want to feel a connection, and they want to spend their 80 or 100 quid on a ticket. And above all else, they want to be entertained. Only one team can win the league. But you talk to Liverpool supporters this season, they're entertained. They feel a connection to the team. It may not be enough for them to win the league, but they're going to enjoy the ride. Nobody's coming away from Anfield thinking they're not getting value for money. Yet every single Manchester United supporter you talk to feels as though that, well, they're not getting any value for money, that there are clubs stagnating. Even Old Trafford is turning into I don't want to say decrepit ground, but it certainly feels old. It hasn't been modernised. Nothing about the club feels as though it's the biggest club in the world, aside from their revenue and aside from their turnover. Aside from that, it feels that United has gone a little bit stale, that it's gone stale on the pitch. So I think whoever they bring in is going to have to be the sort of figure. Pochettino is probably that to a certain extent, but it's going to have to be the figure who gets that connection with the fans, who gets them excited about either the style of football or just somebody who you feel believes in what Manchester United is.
Yeah, like you said, not everybody can win the league, and it's true. But just to take that point on a little bit, we've got Graham Hunter with us on the line. Good morning to you, Graham.
Hi, Eoin.
So just on that, Jose Mourinho, Porto wins the league, Chelsea wins the league, Inter Milan wins the league, Real Madrid, he wins the league, second stint with Chelsea, wins the league. Manchester United, the first time he's gone to a club and hasn't won the league really in his career with Porto onwards. Like, is this the demise of Jose Mourinho? Is this the point where we say this is the part of his career where he's finally fallen away from relevance? Am I overreacting to this entirely and overreacting to the situation that he was in over the past 2 years?
I don't think so. I think that maybe terming it differently is going to be just as fair, in that some of his behaviour at Inter Milan, where he won the treble, you can trace from then till now. And there are extremes in Jose Mourinho's behaviour, not just to the media, because that's not the most relevant part of it, but to club owners, club directors, players, staff, that when he's winning, I think, and again, this is not about how the media then portray him, but it is true that when he's winning, the media portray him as a rascal, as a kind of master of the dark arts, and that's fine when you're winning. But I think that's, all of us listening to your program's an intelligent one. Over my years talking to you off the ball, I know the audience quite well, and they'll fully understand that the relevance of the things that Mourinho does that get a tick or get pushed under the carpet when he's winning, when his squad is winning. The relevance is in terms of what those actions do to erode belief in him, loyalty to him, confidence in him. I don't think that a great deal has changed in terms of whether his footballing proposition is out of date or whether it's irrelevant. I don't think that's fair. Could his football proposition at its very best do with a reboot or an upgrade? Yeah, maybe. But if you put a fit, healthy, confident, happy Mourinho in charge of a first-class squad, the thing that would trouble me as an observer, as a journalist, as somebody who's watched his actions, somebody who knows people upon whom his actions have rebounded on, the thing that would worry you most about whether he could or couldn't fulfill your goals for him once you appointed him would be his behaviour. And I think that's something that it was true at Real Madrid, where he sought out and unnecessarily, and in my opinion, in an unbalanced way, sought out conflict with some of his own most important players, indeed with two of his biggest allies in Pepe and Cristiano Ronaldo. The fact that he fought with Iker Casillas, I thought, was folly, but it's the type of thing that, again, when he's winning, it can be looked as part of the Mourinho armoury of tricks. So there, Inter Milan, at Real Madrid, in the latter part of his spell at Chelsea, some of the things that I've been told by people at that club are jaw-dropping. And I'd go as far as, it's not astounded, I was genuinely surprised that even though Ed Woodward is in a job for which he's not made, the appointment of Jose Mourinho seemed to me bound to end this way. Whenever it happened, it was bound to end in acrimony, dismay, and a lack of fulfilment of goals. But all of that cannot, it's very sexy at this time for analysts or columnists to come on and do a Dumphy and to shout the odds and to say things that will make headlines, and that's not the point. The single biggest point at Manchester United, and it's obvious, to paraphrase Roy Keane, it's obvious to somebody who's blind, is that there is a structure which in two ways is utterly designed to not bring the things that you and Nathan were just talking about. Number one, it's Arsenal. It's Arsenal in the latter 5-6 years of Wenger. The owners are content for the revenue to flow in, and a part of that revenue is ensuring that the great honeysuckle riches of the Champions League are guaranteed year in, year out. And you can reach, as has been the case, for Juventus, for the latter stages of the Champions League and not win it and be far, far better off. And if you happen to be, let's make a hypothesis here. If you happen to be Manchester United going to the quarters or the semi of the Champions League, as the Glazers would look at it, in a year where other English teams get knocked out, you're on 100 million. Now, the other things that Ed Woodward is doing for these owners is making sure that their profits, that what they're taking from the club, are as succulent and as big as they designed the whole exercise to produce. At that stage, there comes a stasis. There comes a lack of need or interest to have a winning, cutting-edge, flinty, hard-nosed football attitude. Yeah. And that is the single biggest problem at Manchester United right now. And the second big problem that remains once Mourinho is gone, and I see constant stories in the UK about United considering appointing a director of football. Well, that has to be a step forward, but it has to be the right person, a person of huge talent and experience, and somebody who reflects a different face on the aspirations of those who invest in Manchester United. And investors, I include players and fans as well as sponsors.
I guess that person then can't have the sort of individuality that Jose Mourinho sort of brings as a manager, Nathan. I guess it is a person who is happy to be more of a cog in a wheel, and I'm not sure how you kind of put a stamp on a football club like that. Maybe it is possible. Maybe you are just a coach, and we were speaking about it with Dave and Daniel earlier on, that it's a coach is what Manchester United need now, rather than the sort of dominant figure in the dressing room. I don't know, maybe that director of football answer by Graham there kind of points to that.
I think Graham touched on it there with Arsenal. Arsenal have done that over the past year. They've structure of the club, and they brought in not just one director of football, they brought in 3 or 4 different people behind the scenes to help Unai Emery, who can now get on the pitch and get on the training ground of this massive task that he does face of trying to overhaul the club. So I think somebody like Mauricio Pochettino would come in and would understand how to work under a director of football and would understand how to embrace a relationship like that and make sure that you are all on the same hymn sheet. It just seems that it's a modern approach that Manchester United have just got left behind with it. It does ease some of the pressure on the manager, I would imagine, in terms of day-to-day activities. It doesn't ease the pressure in terms of the demands for success, but it seems like an absolute no-brainer that Manchester United will bring in a director of football. What will be interesting, though, is how quickly that happens and how much influence they will have then on the successor, and how that builds into Manchester United appointing some sort of a caretaker manager over the next 48 hours. So do they appoint a caretaker in 48 hours, appoint a director of football in 3 months, and that's when you start thinking about who the new permanent manager is?
Yeah, eventually, what we do know is that it's going to be Carrick for training for the next couple of days, and then he's kind of caretaker to the caretaker, and then the actual caretaker comes in and he'll be caretaker to the permanent manager, who'll come in presumably at the end of the season. And I'm not sure who that permanent manager is going to be, because I really just don't know what the actual inside the game view is of Manchester United and working under Ed Woodward, what that is at the moment, because it's a very different thing working for Manchester United and working for Ed. There's
two names that popped up: Zidane and Simeone.
We need some clarity in all of this. You know, when you sack a manager who's been doing the wrong things at a point when your squad is dismayed and you're nearly 20 points off top, anybody who tries to think that getting rid of the manager can bring clarity and purpose over the next 2-3 months is kidding themselves. You can see an upswing. You can see players who were disenchanted trying harder. But order at the level that we've all been talking about is not something you impose immediately. And I like the way that Nathan talked about a change of culture at Arsenal. And sorry, I'll come back to your shortlisted question really quickly, but where owners who are running a club in a way which dulls the football side can appoint people who resharpen the football side, it is caused by the threat of the loss of profit. So the fact that United sacked Mourinho comes down to wholly, they didn't suddenly fall out of love with him. They fell out of love with how far he was off fourth place, which I think is 12 points. And the prospect that for the remainder of the season, it was a guarantee that he wasn't going to take them into fourth place, no matter what he said in the press conference after the Liverpool game. So the idea about caretaker, blah, these things I think are less relevant than the right director of football being appointed and a policy about who to sell, who to sign, and how to become competitive again. That's the crucial appointment. That's the crucial thought pattern. And if it's pushed forward by the Glazers and Ed Woodward moving aside because of the profit motive, then it doesn't matter. It's about getting the right result, whether they do it for the right reasons or not, and every study moral philosophy will back me on that. And therefore, when you start talking about Simeone, Pochettino, and Zidane, one, none of them will come in mid-season. We all know that. Two, Simeone, I know, has tried really hard to master the English language, has taken classes and can't. Simply can't. Right. His sidekick, Mono Burgos, has done much better, has done English language classes, because they were offered the Chelsea job as far back as when Atleti knocked Chelsea out of the semi-finals of the Champions League, which was a Mourinho side again, and that was 2014. And Simeone managing an English Premier League club, let alone Manchester United, without English, I think is not tenable. And also, it's a reverse Gary Neville. Simeone's ability is about communication. Mono Burgos is the first-class coach. And if you've got a coach who can't communicate with his players, irrespective of the number of Spanish speakers in that dressing room, it's not sustainable. Zidane, I will not come short-term in the middle of a failing project. In the summertime, to say can't happen would be foolish of me, but I'm dubious. I think he has other targets. I think he's wise enough not to do a rescue job, a club that he doesn't know intimately. His rescue job at Real Madrid, he was at a club that he knew intimately and had almost unparalleled influence, if not power. And as soon as he saw the ruins of this season, he stepped away. Do you see a man who stepped away with such wisdom at Real Madrid stepping into that job at Manchester United in June? Stranger things have happened, and finally, people keep talking about Pochettino. How do you persuade Daniel Levy to let one of his principal assets go when there's no buyout clause?
You give him a load of money.
No, you can't give him a sum of money that is as powerful as taking a manager that is making Spurs better into the new stadium. I just don't believe it. And what Daniel Levy will ask for is 50, 60 million. Has there ever been a 50, 60 million euro manager?
Well, there's always time for a first. They had the most expensive player in the world at one point in Paul Pogba. Why not have the most expensive manager in the world?
And how's that going?
Well, they're trying to salvage that asset as well, Graham.
Look, we're all long enough in the tooth never to say never. And what I would throw into the water, because this is an interesting Manchester United story. Real Madrid approached Pochettino last summer and talked to him and said, we want you. And he said, I've just renegotiated my deal with Spurs. I've done it without an agent. There's no buyout clause. If there's a way to persuade Daniel Levy, and it is impossible to overstate how much people hate having to do business with a man who still believes that his prime purpose in any negotiation is to win personally, not just to win for his club. So when you unite that with his need to win for Spurs in a squad that has been developed and moulded by Pochettino, well coached by Pochettino, which is on record form under Pochettino and which is moving into a new stadium, the prospect of how you persuade Levy to let you have Pochettino, to me, is one that will daunt and put Manchester United and defeat them. But football is weird. I accept that, and I state now, I am not saying it's impossible. I'm saying to you, it is a task that I think will defeat Manchester United. And what's more, the first inkling at a time when new appointments are being made that Real Madrid get that Pochettino is somebody that can be levered away from Daniel Levy, they will be in there. And if Pochettino is faced with a straight choice between those two clubs, he'll take Real Madrid.
Nathan, last point to you.
Yeah, I think Graham makes a very good point that this is not going to be as straightforward as probably Manchester United hope or as people expect. You talk about Pochettino, and while, as I said, I think maybe if they do go in 50, 60 million, Daniel Levy takes it. But there's every chance that Real Madrid job is up for grabs come next summer. If Barcelona don't win the Champions League and they don't win La Liga, and that's very tight, is that job up for grabs? There's suddenly a lot of big positions available next June, next July. And Manchester United, does it look like the best job even out of those three? You'd have to say it doesn't really. So what happens over the next 48 hours, I think, is going to be pretty fascinating in terms of who that caretaker is. I can't see too many names on that list that stand out as a 6-month appointment. Where the director of football goes over the next 3 months, aside from Pochettino, I literally have no idea where this is going to go from 2 days' time to 6 months' time.
Yeah, I've got a feeling we're going to be talking about it for quite some time. Nathan Murphy, Graham Hunter, thanks a million.
Yeah, I'd say just sit back and start eating the popcorn and let's see how it works out. But they're not in a very strong position, Manchester United, when you consider how big a club it is. But because of what's happened in the last few months under Mourinho, the way the players have performed, it's not as attractive a job as it was a few years ago.
No, for sure. There's a lot of comments coming in. A lot of United fans calling for Zinedine Zidane to be appointed as Manchester United manager. Kieran says, you'll hear very few people talk about the effect Rui Faria had on Mourinho and the team, the fact that he left. That is a good point. Like, it is something that has been spoken about a bit, all right, over the last couple of weeks. Is he the man that Mourinho turned to when he needed just a little bit of solidarity, even just to kind of back up his own opinion, even if his own opinion wasn't always right? At least a defiant Jose Mourinho is often better than a Jose Mourinho who some said over the past couple of weeks was getting used to the idea that he might get sacked and wasn't actually going to be too disappointed. No,
he just had that look, and even his team selections. A lot of times when the team came out, you'd see people responding online going, that it's just Jose Mourinho putting his hand up saying, sack me, please.
Yeah.
And there was a feel of that with his team at Anfield.
Yeah.
Where you were just looking at it going, what's the plan here? You know, you're playing one of your bitter rivals who are, Daniel Harris touched on it earlier. When you look at the Liverpool squad and the United squad, in terms of quality, okay, there's certain players in the Liverpool squad who have improved vastly under Jurgen Klopp. But it's not that they're better, and it's just as a collective they work better, and that's just United, and that's Jose Mourinho, that he often depends on individuals, and those individuals aren't willing to fight for him at United, so it was always going to come to an end. But I'm just wondering, even the first team sheet post Jose Mourinho, that's going to be quite telling as well.
Paul Pogba will 100% be on that team
does
sheet.
Lukaku play? Does Marouane Fellaini play?
Maybe not. Lukaku's career is maybe up for saving with the next manager. There is the idea of bringing Marcus Rashford and Anthony Martial onto the next level, which is such an important part. But there's also the salvaging of Lukaku's career. To a lesser extent, there's the salvaging of Paul Pogba's form. I don't think his career needs to be salvaged. I think that's exaggerating things a little bit, given the 2018 he's had, particularly in the summer. Nicky's been in touch to say, come on lads, there's no chance of Solskjaer. He's a failed manager. While Matt Tuve says this season was the worst of all times. Lars then says, look for a young offensive manager, take your time. You needed a United manager, offensive tactics with wingers and stuff. So scout really good to the summer, which is pretty good advice. Hussein says Diego Simeone is the man. An English problem might be the issue there, according to Graham Hunter. He just can't grasp the language. Brad says Pogba, Bailly, Pereira, Rashford, Martial, Fred. There is a good bunch of attacking players. And Alex says Klopp kills Mourinho. And Alvin then finally says, now fans cannot blame Jose anymore. They will see if the players are really good or just overrated. What do you think?
Yeah, well, that's it. I certainly go back to what was said at the weekend, where people say it's such an easy excuse nowadays. They don't have the players. We hear it with Ireland all the time. We're going to find that out over the next few months as well, where, we don't have the players. But players need to have a structure. And when you look at United, first of all, you didn't know what 11 he was going to pick. You didn't know what formation he was going to pick. Even if you thought you knew what formation he was going to pick when the game started, then you'd look at it and go, okay, that's not the formation. See, if that's the way we're looking in at United, you can only imagine, do the players know what they're trying to do?
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? Phil Egan, thank you so much for being with me in studio this afternoon.
10 to 10.
A good special. Yeah, what you were saying, the 10 to 10 was when
Wenger
was gone.
Yeah.
The last time Jose was gone, I think, was a bit later in the day. Chelsea.
It was an afternoon, yeah. It was just over 3 years ago.
And have you been working every time there's a big Premier League manager sacked?
No, actually, but I happened to be here with the Wenger sacking as well, because it was a Friday, and just remember it was 10 to 10. You're thinking, oh, what's going to be happening over the next few hours? Actually, today as well, like a lot of the back pages were dominated by United in terms of Mourinho. Some were going with the line that Mourinho is the next manager that's going to be sacked in the Premier League. There was stories of Pogba going to Juventus for 140 million. There was the new Martial trigger, the new contract, but whether that was actually going to convince him to stay. So United have been in the headlines since the
they're
defeat.
going to continue to be.
That's it. And that's the pressure the job brings.
And do you know what? That makes commercial sense. Ed Woodward's like, we're getting so much exposure, free press, day after day after day. Stuart Lancaster is next up here on Off the Ball. He's live at 12:30 with John Gordon, and Off the Ball is live with myself from 7 o'clock tonight. Kevin Kilbane amongst the guests, gauging what is going to happen next with Manchester United and perhaps even with Jose Mourinho's career. We're live from 7 o'clock, and OTB AM, as always, live from 7:45 AM tomorrow morning. We'll chat to you then. Bye bye for now.